All right, so I thought I would do a little bit of talking about nothing too controversial, just Nazis and Hitler. Uh, but hear me out. I got my reasons, of course, and of course, what I'll be talking about is right wing Nazis, which is kind of a. I'm not sure if it's an oxymoron, but at the same time, the National Socialists were very socialist. And that's typically a very left wing phenomenon. But anyways, aside from that caveat and so on, I got my reasons for talking about it, and it's relatively light, I think. But I was thinking about Ethan Klein and how he's Jewish, and of course he's doing the most Jewish thing possible at the moment, which is litigation or lawsuits. But personally, after knowing his reasoning for it, I think his cold fury over those particular individuals is completely justified. They didn't just maliciously steal his content and admit to doing so maliciously and so on publicly. They also did other things that he's had to deal with, like mailing human skulls to his house and trying to call child protective services to raid his house and steal his kids away from him, and even though they don't deserve that and so on. So, he's going lawfare John Wick mode, and his 20-minute video is absolutely the coldest fury I've seen in a long, long time. And it's completely justified. He's hitting them on the lawsuits rightfully for what they've done wrong, but he probably would have let it slide if they hadn't have attacked his children. Because he's kind of a chill out vibes dude in a way a lot of the time. I'm pretty sure he smokes weed or used to, and I would never have put it to him that he could be that composed and forward thinking and aggressive. And I don't mean ferocious or fierce or presenting ferocity or scary in a way, except after the fact of what the trap he set was and so on. That's what makes him scary, that he can think that far ahead and do that so effectively. And I'm not blaming him for doing it. I'm not saying he's in the wrong at all, basically. They have done horrible things to him. I'm sure his personal motivation is because of those things I mentioned that aren't technically part of the lawsuit aspect. And I think the only reason he's doing the lawsuit is because he would have let that go, the lawsuit stuff go, if they hadn't done so much horrible shit to him before. But they got me thinking about how I might explain right-wing culture and its relationship to Nazis to him. Because one of the things I wanted to say is Ethan Klein owes Jordan Peterson a bit of an apology, I think. Because Jordan Peterson did warn him that those people would do to him what he did to Jordan Peterson or others and so on. Jordan Peterson was prophetic in that regard. So it's just, and that led me into thinking about reactionaryism and the whole Nazi shtick. Because lately I've been seeing 1 or 2 or 3 memes about Hitler and the right wing and so on. And it's sort of a particular to the right wing sense of humor and so on. And I'll explain that later in the video. But I want to get this part done first, basically, So that might actually calm Jordan Peterson down a little bit and get him away from the culture war a little bit if he knows Ethan Klein is kind of coming around, not necessarily too hard right wing, but sort of centrist. Right? Sort of an Asmongold position more so than Hassan Piker position. Just by being burned from his compatriots, and then it's not necessarily you leaving the left entirely. It's that the left left you and you went to the other side. There's a specific comic where someone on the left in a red, there's a line and someone's in between 2 sides on the middle of the line, and someone like pushes him, or like he's on the left side, but close to the line, and then a different person who's more left than him pushes him to the right, uh, and right side people, and then they pick him up and he stands up, and then the left guy who pushed him says, "Why are you siding with them? They're evil." It's like that kind of situation with Ethan Klein, I think. It's justified on his part to do what he's doing and so on. I just hope he learns a valuable lesson in that on some level. And like takes it to heart, basically, and never comes back to them in that way again that it was before. Yeah. Anyways, so on to the funny stuff. So, as one knows, Kanye released a song lately, and the lyrics were "Nigga, Hail Hitler." Now, some people have been having fun with this. One of them is a purple-robed group of people who are white, and the purple-robed black community is like a specific cult or something, and they hold long marches of "Some of us used to sell drugs, not no more." Some of us used to leave our kids, not no more. We're respectful fathers now, or something like that. I can't remember the exact lyrics, but it's something like that, basically. That's the gist of what they're saying. Yeah, so like the white people in this AI-generated video with Kanye's song in the background, with those lyrics of "Nigga, Hail Hitler," is being played, and one of the shots is really funny. It's of a Down syndrome guy going like hey 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 hey, walking to the camera, kind of big strut, and with the lyrics on his chest in text, white text on a black background, and he's got a purple robe and so on. It's AI generated, but it's still funny, And I'll explain why in a second. And then it's got like "It's so over, we're so back," and the Kanye lyrics again in the middle for three people as like a family or something. I think it's two men technically. So it's like so it's like a gay family with a Down syndrome kid with these Kanye lyrics going on and so on. And there's a meme that came out recently of two Giga Chads, basically, and it was like 4 lines of text, and one is they say the Kanye lyrics, the 3 words, and then the other guy goes, Kanye fan, I hate these wiggers, and the other guy goes, no, I meant it more in of a Down syndrome in a wizard costume way, and then the other guy says, my apologies. And it's like, okay, and then the funny thing is that there's 2 other memes that came about before the video that I mentioned, borrowing Kanye's song and that particular meme. And I'll mention the second one first, the first one first, and it came out a long time ago. There's a image that says "Celebrate Diversity," and it fades out, and there's a faded out swastika, and then there's like solid black and white or artificially colorized pictures of like every race imaginable on Earth, and like 1 or 2 of women, and it's real photographs. It's before AI even existed. They're real photographs of people in Wehrmacht or German army Nazi uniforms. And that's just real history, So it's like there's a funny thing going on there, right? And also this next meme, the 4th meme or whatever that I want to mention, is there's a picture of Hitler again, and he's kind of got like a dead inside look where he's gazing into the abyss on like a psychiatric couch or something, and there's like and it's like a real photograph of Hitler, so it's not like it's like, it's like not fake. It's a real photograph of him doing that. And There's a very, very faded, barely noticeable picture of Nick Fuentes and Kanye West. And the text says, I keep having this dream, doctor, that my legacy is being carried on by a mentally ill colored boy and a gay Mexican. Yeah. And that's the right wing stance on this whole Nazi business, to be honest. It's like, I mean, I realize some people who are kind of right wing in a way or something are like serious about this sort of Hitler thing. But a lot of the people who are reactionary or hard right wing look at those types and they just go like, "What a clown!" They don't believe in it, and that's part of the joke in it, right? Because we've been called Nazis for so long that we just kind of like, "Oh yeah, hail Jesus," you know. you know. Of course, the funny thing is, Nazism actually took something. They took Jesus Christ out of Christianity for their. I don't even want to call it a branch of Christianity, because if you take the main character out, it's like taking Luke Skywalker out of Star Wars. It doesn't make sense at that point, or at least like out of the original trilogy, at least, right? Or Anakin out of the prequel trilogy. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay. Or Frodo out of the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy, or something like that. Or Bilbo out of the Hobbit trilogy. That's what it's like taking out of. And you're still calling it the original thing. And if you notice, that's a very woke thing to do. So there might be a little connection between woke and Nazism, because they're both forms of socialism. And they tend to have, we were oppressed as a race, and therefore we should rise to be world dominators, and you don't deserve your own country, it's ours now, and we're going to make sure your race dies off. Kind of what's happening to white people right now from the in the Western civilization and so on. And that's what mass immigration is making worse and so on. So it's like, okay, there's a connection between the 1930 to 45 socialists friendly to Islam that hate Christianity and don't believe in national boundaries, national borders, and the 2015 to 2025, 2010 to 2025 ones, who basically can be described similarly in those exact words. Maybe they're not identical, but there's a certain degree of spiritual alliance between the 80 to 100 years ago version and the one today. So, anyways, the thing is, Jonathan Pajot had a really interesting video interview with Winston Marshall on the post-World War II consensus and how it's falling apart, and is it too late to fix it up a little bit, and so on. And he was mentioning that that Hitler cannot be worse than the devil, right? But we act like he is. And if you think about it, by definition, through Christian faith, the devil is responsible for Hitler and Stalin and Lenin and Mao and Pol Pot and Fidel Castro and Pinochet and Francisco Franco and I mentioned Hitler, and Mussolini and Genghis Khan and Napoleon and Alexander of Macedon / the Great, and of Caesar, and the Assyrians, all of them combined. That's what the devil's responsible for. So logically, the devil is worse than any of them, because he's responsible for all those names I mentioned. But specifically, Hitler is going to have to take a back seat as the ultimate evil eventually, and fade into the distance as the ultimate evil. And I guess he's responsible for Putin and Tony Blair as well, and Carney and Trudeau and Biden, and Bush. Give some recent examples. But basically, we can't just call everyone that we don't like Hitler anymore. We can't use Hitler as the ultimate evil. The devil must be the ultimate evil. He's an abstraction of every single bad person or wicked person. Maybe because everyone makes mistakes, everyone's not perfect, and so on, and we have varying degrees of good and bad and so on. But I mean the worst, like 10%, 5%, 1% of the world throughout all history is Owen Muhammad. Devil's definitely responsible for Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. The devil's responsible for like everything bad that happens sort of on some level, but it's also our personal responsibility to resist the devil so that we don't just follow him gladly, you know. And those who follow him gladly are the ones that we associate as the devil or worse than the devil at the time of their particular evil. And really, it's the devil that's the worst evil there is, who's behind puppeteering all the worst names we can think of. But Hitler is going to have to, as a mere mortal human, fade into history as just another one on a long string of tyrants and murderers and despots and so on. You know, and Stalin and so on. And basically, the funny thing about those memes I mentioned specifically is that the Down syndrome guy in the wizard costume, the mentally ill gay black man, the gay Mexican Nick Fuentes, Hitler would have genocided each and every one of those things. So when the right's playing with these ideas, they're basically saying Hitler's legacy is carried on by the people he would have killed. Yeah, and it's kind of like, there's two ways to approach that, and they're both kind of valid, which is, wow, that's really goddamn stupid. They're crazy. Yeah, but the other one is also like, the other people commenting on it are having a ball making fun of that aspect of the serious Nazis. You know, and we should not call them actual Nazis. You know, making a wry joke about someone else who's immoral might be at their expense on some level, you know? It's the context that you are expecting the person to understand it in that should be thought of when doing serious political analysis of memes and jokes and so on. And by the way, that's through Action T4 and the Holocaust. Action T4 predates the Holocaust, and it was inspired by the progressive era eugenics policies of the progressives in sterilizing the mentally ill, which gives a throwback to the whole transsexual movement today. And Margaret Sanger, who wanted to abort black babies primarily, and the fact that it's mostly black people aborting their babies today. So Margaret Sanger would be proud, basically. Or she'd say, it's a start, but it's not enough. You know, as what Margaret Sanger might say about Planned Parenthood and so on. You know. And if you want to know the real reactionary worldview when it's at its peak, there's only one name you need to know. Clemens Graf von Galen. Graf, Graf, von, V-O-N, Galen, Galen. Peak GigaChad. The guy was openly the guy was openly shit-talking Hitler in the middle of the Holocaust, before the Holocaust, in Nazi Germany, from a Christian standpoint and a nationalist standpoint. Mostly from a Christian standpoint, because he believed in Germany, but he wanted it to be Christian. And he believed in Christian Germany, not socialist Germany. He believed in the idea that Germans had been stabbed in the back when they could have won anyways. That's one mark maybe against him if you take that to be Nazism or something like that inherently. But everything else he said was like pure Christianity and honest to God patriotism for his people. And it wasn't his people versus the Jews entirely. He might have had a certain degree of, well, the Jews were the chosen people, but they're not anymore, and they're just really jealous of the Christians and so on. He might have believed that, but he wouldn't have said that's a good enough reason to slaughter them, and he openly talked against the Holocaust and killing of other races, and he openly talked against Action T4 and the killing of the mentally ill. Basically said, look, the mentally ill need our help. We should not be murdering them. We should be taking care of them as best as we can. And the other races don't deserve to be categorized as the devil just because some of them, like the rest of us, are evil. Now, that's for murdering them. He didn't say don't deport them because he believed in boundaries. He believed in borders. But the thing is, I think he also talked against Nazi Germany's proclivity to ignore countries' borders. So I think he would have said, like, the Germans should not invade other countries. And today we're kind of saying we should not be invaded by other countries. And if you notice, one of the things about Trump that makes him unique, and this is why the Nazi thing really wears thin with him, is he stayed out of the Ukraine-Russian war as much as possible in terms of direct military conflict. So he's not crushing Russia. He's arming Ukraine over time, and Zelensky's being a little bitch, pretending he's going to win the war at any given time, even though he's always losing. You know, and he's, yeah, okay, he destroyed some bombers, but they weren't being used in the war against him. All it did is piss Russia off and make them crush him harder in the end. You know, so it's like, okay, you got a brat that spits in the eye of the bully that can punch his jaw off, his nose off, you know, like break his teeth in. You know, it's like, what are you doing, man? You know, so that's Zelensky, Ukraine, and Russia. He negotiated peace between Pakistan and India when they were beginning to get into some hot war territory. And he's... I'm not sure what he's doing with Iran necessarily, but I think he's probably going to not invade boots on the ground. So at least he's stayed boots off the ground for 3 different wars that people have been calling for him to participate in, basically. You know, and he might engage in airstrikes from the U.S. carrier groups, Navy fleet on Iran, but he's not going to invade boots on the ground and so on. You know, I don't think. He might. I mean, it depends on if they get enough intel to say Iran's got enough nukes to actually make something dangerous on that scale and intends to use it or not. That might change his tune pretty hard, you know. But on the flip side, Netanyahu's been banging on the Iran has nukes in 3 months kind of rhetoric since 1996, 1995. So, you know, that's about 30 years of banging on about the same thing, basically. You know, for 30 years it's been 3 months before Iran gets nukes. It's like, whatever, man, at that point. But respecting national boundaries is actually something the Nazis did not do. So the people claiming to respect their own country but wanting to abolish border controls are basically turning their own countries into other people's Lebensraum, which is the official Nazi Germany term for their land. We're going to take it, kill them off, and live there ourselves. And as the white race is dying off through natural birth rate decline, and mass immigration is occurring and driving those birth rates even lower due to the increased cost of living associated with more people, same or slightly barely more housing. So roughly same housing, more people. Supply and demand says everything gets more expensive, rent or purchase wise or mortgage wise. The sheer volume of cost of living is preventing us from having kids, and it's only gotten worse since mass immigration. Okay, that kind of says we're the third world's Lebensraum. And I guess I'll leave it there. But yeah, that's kind of the interplay and so on. And it doesn't all fit one to one necessarily, but you can see how there's a certain spirit of things and how it like closely associates with certain aspects and so on. So there's three spheres of influence, which is one particular situation where a statement of facts actually applies, a slightly more generalized but maybe unique to that particular category of people or situation types, distinguishing aspect, or a nearly universal or consistent enough to be called nearly universal aspect of possible facts and so on. And we just say, good enough. We'll just say it's exactly that, basically, in general. So, yeah.